And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. He is Denny Thompson. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green, along with Southeast Orthopedic Specialist Denny, the good folks also at George Moore Chevrolet.
I had this conversation with Justin Moore a couple weeks ago because I haven't been in here in a little while. I'm like,
what it's good to see you again, by the way.
I'm like, what do you want me to say on this Gator podcast? Like, we have to do 3 of these every time. He's like, you're doing good. So, Justin, I'm just going to take your advice here and just tell y'all, if you're going to go buy a car, if you're going to go get your car serviced or truck even, George Moore Chevrolet, used, new, they've been around forever. Service department is like, you could eat off the floor. Like, seriously, eat off the floor. Good peeps. So that's all you really need. Everything else is the same everywhere, so just go there.
You said it. They've been around forever, and there's a reason they've been around forever, because they take good care of their customers. George Moore Chevrolet, and again, Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. All right. Haven't seen you in a while, man. How are you?
Tired.
Yeah?
But good.
A lot of draft prep going on. Again, Denny, the owner of 6 Points.
Yeah, week of Combine is always fun. It's like, but it is exhausting, dude. It is that whole behind the scenes at the Combine is wild.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a rodeo.
Yeah. It's wild. So I'm still recovering from that, but I'm good.
That's one of my favorite things of the Combine, and the Senior Bowl has kind of turned into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Is the conversations in the hotel lobbies, the conversations you hear at dinner or at a bar, down the street. It's amazing some of the things you hear football related.
Oh yeah, it's this year was I felt like it was a little bit different because it didn't feel like as many people were participating. I think we're getting into a season of evolution for the Combine. I think they're going to have to evolve that thing to make it a little bit more relevant to today's game. But it's still 90% of all business gets done that week in Indianapolis, and it's just super interesting. I don't know. I'm assuming other businesses are that way. I've not been in other businesses in a while, but it is definitely a you don't sleep much that week in Indy.
While we're on the topic, Ricky Pearsall doing pretty good for himself, climbing up the draft boards.
Explosive. I think he came away as one of the big winners. And when you sat there, they ran the same day as the quarterbacks. And so I got to see all these guys, and that was fun. This group of receivers, very smooth, very explosive. Obviously, the kid from Texas, Worthy. To be able to go 4.25, and it's not the speed, but I was there, y'all, to go 4.25, have the whole crowd staring at you to see if you're going to run that second one, and line up and go 4.21 in that second one. You got to take that, man. You got to draft that because that guy's got it. Like that guy, and I know he's 170 pounds or whatever he is, but every eyeball was sitting right there on him. And when you talk to these guys and they tell you it's intimidating, you line up and you look ahead, and all you see is white, and those lasers seem like they're so close to you.
Yeah.
One little wobble, and it's a pure embarrassment. So to take all that in and to be able to answer with 4.21, I'm drafting that guy.
Yeah, it was a fun week at the Combine. Now the Combine's in the rearview mirror, and all of a sudden you look on the calendar, and we're into spring football. The Gators are on the field for spring ball. Their first practice was yesterday afternoon. They have 15 practices in spring, and certainly the big storyline. We'll get to Billy Napier and the staff in a moment, but you are the quarterback guy. That's what you do for a living. Certainly the dynamic between the returning Graham Mertz and the new arrival of DJ Lagway.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting dynamic for sure. They're doing this thing, all these schools are doing this thing where they have a practice and they take spring break and then they come back, and I'm not real sure what the purpose of that is, but they released a lot of video of DJ throwing yesterday. A lot of that got out, and it looked good. So I go back to, if you're Graham Mertz, though, you had a decision to make. You could come out, you could come back to Florida, you could transfer somewhere else. I have to believe that he has been assured that this is his deal as long as he does what he did last year and plays that way. So I don't think that there's really truly a competition here. I think there's just an excitement, rightfully so, for probably the biggest recruit that Florida's had, the most important recruit that Florida's had in a long, long time.
When it comes to Lagway, the interesting thing is, and as well as I do, if Florida drops a couple of games in September, people are going to be clamoring for Lagway. This is a year where you'd like to have Ball State, where you'd like to have, team Southern Miss, right? Other than Samford, it's just a gauntlet the entire year. I mean, how much do you want to get Lagway in? Assuming Mertz stays healthy was a big assumption with that schedule and with the play of the Gator offensive line. But don't you want to get Lagway on the field to start getting him ready for the future at least a little bit?
Yeah, but I think there's different ways you can do that. I mean, I think, we talk about putting packages together for these guys. The first step in getting used to big-time college football is taking a snap. And I know that sounds so silly, but even if you take a snap and run forward, or even if you take a snap and hand it off, you're getting used to some form of the speed, and it's kind of a crawl, walk, run thing. So the way I think the reasonable way to look at this is, how do we get DJ meaningful package snaps early and then let it kind of mature from there, right? And if we feel confident enough that he gives us a best chance to win, we have the best chance to win if he plays 20 plays by week 5, then that's what we do. But I don't think there's any need to put pressure on the situation early. Nobody's expecting a national championship.
No.
Right? So, I think that's a good thing. The problem is, and my worry is this is obviously a very talented kid. What happens if you start off 2-4? And all of Gator Nation is clamoring for DJ Lagway, and DJ Lagway is not quite ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
But the staff understands that we need a spark to keep our job.
I.e. Anthony Richardson.
Right. And all of a sudden you roll him out there against Georgia.
Right.
Or something like that. That's my only concern. But the thing about Napier is I think he is if he's nothing else, he's very disciplined. And I truly believe that he's not going to do anything to hurt that kid, even if it means his job's on the line.
Now, to the Graham Mertz side of this, a year ago, everybody in Gator Nation, whether they want to admit it or not, was at best lukewarm on Graham Mertz. And then all of a sudden he goes out there and plays, and he wasn't half bad. I'm curious to see, again, he's going to be healthy now after the collarbone. I'm going to be very curious to see Graham Mertz a second year in that Florida system.
Yeah, me too. I as a Florida fan, I do look at this at times and go, wait a second. Because to piggyback off Pearsall, I look at this at times and go, wait a second. So you had Anthony Richardson, you had Ricky Pearsall, and you had Trevor Etienne. What do we have to show for it? Mm-hmm. Like, I do look at that, right? So I think, and then you can even put Graham Mertz in that last year. Graham was not the reason they lost. And you had Graham Mertz, and you had Etienne, and you had Pearsall. And so I think for Florida fans right now is the overwhelming feeling is, can we get a team out there that doesn't do stupid things during a game that costs us a game? And then what's just the flow of this offense? Because you've had explosive guys, but I wouldn't call the offense explosive. They've had big explosive plays, but they haven't done it consistently over the course of even a game, much less a season. So I think more than anything right now, and it's big for Graham as well, is can you maintain or can you create a flow of an offense that you can use the entire year? You
got to replace your two best skill position guys. Ricky Pearsall is going to be in the NFL. Trevor Etienne is going to be between the hedges. Quickly to Etienne, we haven't talked since he did that podcast that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, where he said, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially, you could be, why did you leave to go to Georgia? Well, I could have been the second running back at a losing program, or I could be RB1 potentially at a winning program. And what he said was not wrong. There's no fabrication there. But to say that, Gator Nation did not receive that very well.
I mean, if they didn't receive that very well, I don't really know what to tell them. It's the truth. I mean, what part of that is a lie?
I guess the truth hurts, right?
Yeah. I mean, nothing that he said is a lie. He was on a team that had a losing record in which he was running back 2. He's going to a team with 2 national championships in the last 3 years where he's running back 1. If you get your feelings hurt by that, that seems to be your problem, not his, because all he did was tell the truth right there. And as a Florida fan, I hate that. But what am I going to say? What can you say about that?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to fire back when it's 100% accurate.
Right. Is there even an arguable point in that?
Well, and you look at it now where the running back is. And
by the way, I didn't know he said that.
Yeah.
That's the first we have been completely unplugged. So
this was like a week and a half ago.
Yeah, and I haven't heard the whole quote, but on the surface, like I don't know how you get upset about that.
I mean, like I said, I find very little fabrication in what he said, but I guess just the point that he said it was kind of interesting for Gator fans. That leads us to where we are now. Montrell Johnson, a very good tailback. I'm very curious about Trayon Webb and what he could do. Obviously, Trinity Christian product that's down there. They like a couple of the freshmen that are there. And then wide receiver-wise, Eugene Wilson, the problem now is there's no Ricky Pearsall to help Eugene Wilson.
Eugene Wilson's a dude, though.
But how good is he going to be without Pearsall taking coverage away from him?
I think he'll be fine. I don't think – I mean, he's a year older. You could tell really early on that kid just has something different about him, just get the ball in his hands type thing. You can allow yourself to look at this roster and make sense of a decent season, right? There is talent on this roster, and they've done a decent job in the portal, and they did a good job recruiting last year. I want, as a Gator fan, obviously I want them to win, but the best case for Florida is that Napier turns this thing around, and we're sitting here a year from now after, a 7 or 8 win season, and we're excited about coming off another good recruiting class, excited about the future. The best case for Florida is not to get rid of Napier, right? Like, that is not in any way you want. I know Billy well enough to know that he is an SEC coach. He's just not had time, really, I don't believe, to get everything the way he needs it to be. So as a Florida fan, even when I say that about Trevor Etienne, and even when I talk about some of the offense and some of the mistakes that they make, I actually still, as a Florida fan, want Napier to be the coach in Gainesville for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I like some of the things that he's done, and we'll get to the staff and some of those changes in a moment, but there's no doubt there's pressure on him. In fact, let's get there in a second. Southeast Orthopedic Specialists brings you Gator Bytes. They're the highest quality care. You can rely on Southeast Ortho for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can log on to their website, se-ortho.com, and you can listen for Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, the good Dr. Kevin Murphy, on Thursday mornings in the 7 o'clock hour with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in sports. Also, the good folks at George Moore Chevrolet.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, too, that if you see Dan Hicken in public, just walk up to him and say, hey, Denny said I could drive your truck. I'm sure he will let you. That man is obsessed with that truck from George Moore.
I understand why.
You see where he parks it?
Yeah, out in the back, way back there.
Yeah, like he's getting his steps in. He won't park within, I don't know, 100 feet of anybody.
I think he wants it to stand out so that everybody sees
it. It does that. He saw that color, and it was just like a light from heaven shining. Gator blue.
Yeah, it is.
Gator blue, beautiful. So just tell him you want the Dan Hicken truck.
130 some odd coaches in Division I football. As we sit here going into the middle part of March, is there anybody on a hotter seat than Billy Napier?
I'm sure somewhere, but it would be hard to find. To your point, you know what I mean? I'm sure randomly there's somewhere that somebody's going to get fired week 3, that the AD's just had enough, and it's needs. But pure performance pressure, when you take the stage, when you take what college football is going to become next year, because college football next year, and we could feel this at the Combine. All of us were talking about this at the Combine. You can feel the momentum. College football is getting ready to explode on a national level.
I mean, it's the biggest college football season in history. It's going to be 5 months long, ending with a 12-team playoff.
And it's always been this way down south, right? But when you talk to other people around the country, what this playoff and all this kind of stuff has done is it almost has brought an NFL feel.
Mm-hmm.
And college football, if you've lived in the South your whole life, is nowhere near as big as the NFL up north. It's not even close, right? So I think in this year, with everything at stake and the money on the table that's on the table and the need to win so that your boosters can put you in a position to continue success through NIL or whatever it looks like, yeah, I mean, you're probably right. Billy Napier has to check all of those boxes, and that's got to be a ton of pressure.
Well, and the thing about it, too, is I'm not sure if Vince Lombardi could go through this schedule with the amount of talent Florida has. I agree there's talent. And maybe some of these teams are not as good as we think they're going to be on paper. But all we can go on is paper right now. I've followed Gator football since 1990. I'm one of the lucky ones where I don't remember anything before Spurrier. I'm 40 years old. In 1990, I was 6 and I turned 7 in the middle of the year. That's as far back as I can really go. And I don't remember a harder schedule for the Gators in 3.5 decades on paper than what they have here in 2024.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And I think we talk about what the record will be, right? We talk about is there 5 wins, is there 6 wins, is there 7 wins on the schedule. But I also think that we got to realize that when we get to October and you get to that stretch that's including Georgia and all those guys.
Texas and Ole Miss and LSU and Florida State.
Yeah, I think at that point of the season, you're going to have a good idea because the schedule is so hard. Like, are these guys still ultra competitive? Or do we go into each week knowing and thinking it's going to be an exciting football game? And I think that matters, right? I think if you go 4-8, you get the doors blown off of you the last 5 weeks, that's one thing. If you go 5-7, but those last 5 weeks you were competitive and played in an overtime game and played in a 41-38 game, and then at that point I think you got to look at this and go, okay, hold on, we're building something. And you have to recognize, to your point, that this is the hardest schedule in the history of college football. Mm-hmm. The only one that I can think of that's close is, do you remember the Arkansas schedule when they changed it for COVID? And it was just brutal.
Yeah.
It was like they just crapped on Arkansas, right? That's the only one that I can think of that's even close to this one.
Well, it's like you look at Florida, and was it Jackie Sherrill of Mississippi State? I believe that's who it was. He had a quote back in the day. You can get up, in his opinion, for 3 big games a year, right? To start off the year, your guys are jacked. Middle of the season, big conference game, your guys can get jacked. And at the end of the year, for the rival, you guys can get jacked. The rest of the time, you have to rely on your talent to get you over the hill. In Florida's case, you better be jacked for Miami, because they're going to be. You better be fired up for A&M, because they're going to be. You better be fired up to go to Knoxville, because they're going to be.
Yeah.
Kentucky's beat you 3 in a row. You better be fired up for that one. UCF, that's their Super Bowl, coming to Gainesville in the regular season. And now I'm not even mentioning LSU, Georgia, Florida State, Ole Miss, Texas. It is insanity how hard their schedule is.
No, it really is. And the UCF Miami thing is what really does it. And because if you look across college football, everybody has these schedules now, which I like. And
the UCF thing was added once I got KJ Jefferson. That all of a sudden, I mean, if UCF would have had a standard run-of-the-mill quarterback, all right. KJ Jefferson just came into the swamp and put 40 on you last year in Arkansas, and now he's the UCF guy.
Well, and I think ball has changed so much too, because when Jackie Sherrill was coaching, that truly was in the days of you've got 2 or 3 big games on TV each week, and Mississippi State wasn't usually one of those. But now I think these guys, even at a young age in high school, they're loading up these schedules. They're learning kind of how to regulate their body to get through an entire season. Carson Beck is in town right now. We were talking about this, and he's like, there's a world where you could win a national championship and have to play 17 football games now.
Craziness. Yeah.
17 football games. Do you remember the outcry when they added the conference championship games? Like, oh, my God, you're making these kids play 12. And now we have bumped it to 17 to win a national championship.
Well, at an absolute minimum, I think a minimum to win a national championship, 16? It's 16.
Yeah.
Could it be 15 if you're Notre Dame?
Maybe if you're Notre Dame.
I think if you're Notre Dame, maybe 15. Yeah. But the bare minimum is 15 games to win the national championship. Most likely 16, and it could potentially be 17.
Probably equally between 16 and 17. It's just – so I guess the point is, to piggyback off the Jackie Sherrill quote, I do think that there's – also been a lot of science go into like how mentally you prepare for a long season, even throughout Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Here's what you do. And it's, you got to detach from football, which from a fan's perspective, you see these guys like go to dinner 2 nights before a game. You're like, oh my God, what are you doing before? No, that's necessary. Mm-hmm. Like you have got to fully be able to detach, and that's harder at the college level than it is at the pro level, because you have classes, you're around students all the time. All anybody wants to talk about is football. At the pro level, you're just doing football. You get to go home to your family and unwind. So I think it's going to be a very interesting couple of years here as college football tries to fill out. That's a lot of games when you're taking classes and when you're 19 years old. Like who is able to manage that the best at the elite programs? That's a real thing.
I want to end with basketball. Before we get there, the coaching staff changes for Billy Napier. Not so much the names that he brought in, but he did bring in some help, right? They got help on defense. They got help on special teams. They've added guys. They did lose guys. I mean, Corey Raymond's gone. Obviously, they got rid of some guys. All in all, are you happy with what the Gators did this offseason with the staff?
I've been consistent on this, and you can back me up. I said going in that if I'm Billy Napier, I'm going to I know my job's on the line. And whatever he does is what he truly believes gives them the best chance to win next year. Because that's all he's got right now is next year, guaranteed to him. And I largely agreed early on that you don't need to change coordinators or anything like that because the languages need to stay the same. If you got to win for 1 year, you got to win for 1 year, and you need to keep the confusion at a minimum, and I think he's done that. I think for the most part that's probably was his game plan is, yes, I need to make some changes, I need to make help, but I'm not willing on this career year to just blow it all up, put a new system in, run a new offense, give new language, learn how to communicate with these coaches and all that kind of stuff. So I think he's probably done a pretty good job of balancing that.
You've been around the college game for a long time. You talked to a lot of these coaches. Final thought on spring ball, at least for right now. What's the goal? 15 practices. Games don't actually matter for another 5.5 months. What are you looking to accomplish over the next month?
You can accomplish a lot in spring. Yeah, I think largely in high school, spring and football is like a waste of time and just a way to get injured. In college, you get to find out a lot about your team. How do they retain information? How do your older kids, because a lot of your freshmen are in, how do your older veterans line up with your younger recruits? Like, what does that mesh look like? What does our personnel look like? Nowadays, what do we need to go get in the portal? Where are we missing? Because there's another portal opening coming, and there's going to be a lot of people available in that portal. And then overall, just what is – you won't know this, your team won't know this, but as a coach – you'll get an idea, like what is the identity? What during the summer do we need to lean on? What are we really good at? Like we go through these spring, what are the 5 or 6 different concepts that our guys just get? And every time we run it, it looks really, really good. And how do we set up our year, both offensively and defensively, to play to those strengths and those advantages? And you have a whole summer to do that. So I think spring ball, if used right, is very valuable.
Today's Gator Bytes podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in Jacksonville and St. Augustine. Again, that includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. And after you're done visiting Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, run on by the good folks at George Moore Chevrolet.
I hope you can run. I hope you go to Southeast and you can run like that. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, I mean, everybody's driving around with that little oil sticker that's like 1,000 miles past due.
Yeah.
Just shoot on in there and get that taken care of. While you're there, you'll realize, like, that's the place to be.
And we certainly appreciate George Moore Chevrolet and, again, Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for bringing you Gator Bytes. Basketball's fun again in Gainesville. And look, obviously, back-to-back national titles. It was fun, 15 or so years ago. There had been a lull. Even when they were going to the tournament with Mike White, there were not sellouts in Gainesville. People were kind of upset with the product, getting numb to the product. Man, sellout after sellout after sellout. They absolutely beat the tar out of Auburn and Alabama in Gainesville this year. They are a shoo-in for the NCAA tournament. Give this to Todd Golden. There were a lot of questions about him last year. And, Denny, I think there were questions about Todd Golden 6 weeks ago.
No doubt.
And they found something in the midway point of the year, and now we're talking 6 seed in the NCAA tournament, maybe an outside chance at a 5 seed.
I mean, if they can play the way that they need to play through the SEC tournament, you can make an argument for a 4.
You could, yeah.
I mean, you really could with the quality of some of their wins. So but you said it. It's fun to watch. I'm not a basketball connoisseur, but I know when I'm watching something if I'm enjoying watching it or not, and I enjoy watching this. With the last couple of years, it's been, oh, God, I got to watch this Gator basketball game. Right? Now it's, Florida's playing tonight. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a huge testament to what Golden's been able to do, because if that's showing through the TV and that's showing to us, that's also showing to recruits and to transfer portal guys, and that sellout stuff matters. And Florida is a special place when you start selling out sports venues. It's a whole different vibe in that whole city. So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I also am well aware that the stinker is there, right?
Yeah.
Like they could get bounced very early on, but that's what makes it exciting. And kind of what we were talking about with Napier, it makes you excited for next year. Because, like, okay, we're heading in the right direction. Another year of maturity. They're not going to lose a lot. So, yeah, I mean, I think largely correlation between the football team. If you can get that same energy out of the football team this next year, we're getting out of the basketball team. Like, it'll be happy times in Gainesville.
I mean, not to break down the X's and O's of their roster, but I knew it at the beginning of the year. They got 4 ball handlers, and they got 4 bigs. That's a good combination, right? They got
Works.
4 big men where foul trouble is not necessarily a problem, all things considering, with Howe, with Condon, with obviously Samuel and Hanlockton, and then Richard, Clayton, Pullen, and Riley Kugel. Kudos to Riley Kugel, the star of the team last year. He was the star of the team. It would have been very easy for him to complain and moan and whine and be like, this is ridiculous. I'm coming off the bench. Forget this. He has been the ultimate team guy.
Yeah.
The ultimate team guy, which, again, I think is a testament to Todd Golden.
Yeah, when you see that, there's been honesty, right? That there's a player-coach relationship, that they trust each other, and there's been a conversation that's had. And, hey, this is better for the team, and this is the way I'm seeing this, and ultimately I think this is better for you, and everybody's got buy-in, and I think it shows the way they're playing.
There's been a lot of grief on Scott Strickland, the AD, about some of the hires that he's made, particularly on the football side. And obviously, some will tell you Strickland's future will be determined on what happens with Napier. Does he get any credibility? I shouldn't say credibility. He has credibility. Does he get any bonus points because it looks like he's hit a home run with Todd Golden?
I don't think so. Because if we were judging the athletic director as a whole, and we were looking at all the sports, then we'd never be talking about his job being in danger. I mean, they are one of the best overall sports programs in the country.
It's just football.
Yeah. That's the unfortunate thing about this. I mean, every year they're in the top 5 for top overall sports programs in the country. It's just at Florida and in the South, like you go as football goes.
Good run for the Gators in the NCAA tournament. They're going to get in. Do they need to get to the 32? Do they need to get to the 16? Do they need to get to the 8? I mean, what's your thought on good year compared to average year compared to underachieving year?
I think you got to play in the second weekend, right? Do you feel that way?
I mean, if you're a top 6 seed, you would play a 3 in round 2. 3 versus 6, that's like saying it's the number 9 team in the country versus the number 25 team in the country. Fairly even, I would think, at that point. I think absolutely win in round 1, because if you don't win in round 1, that means you're upset.
Right.
Round 2, I would be disappointed. I don't think it would be considered a failure, though. Sweet 16 and beyond, to me, is tip your cap to the guy.
Yeah, the NCAA tournament is always so funny to me because you win that one extra game that first weekend, and then you get to talk about it that whole week. And I think there's such value because your season is extended and you're one of only 16 teams that are being talked about. I think there's so much value in that second weekend. It feels so different. It doesn't feel a whole lot of different to me if you win round 1 and lose round 2. You know what I mean? You got to get to that next weekend. I feel like to be considered obviously one of the top 16 programs. But even if you don't get to that second weekend, a lot of times you're not considered a top 30 program because just the way that the bracket shakes out.
Final question, because I don't know the answer to this. So you're more in this world than I am. The Gators were amazing in the transfer portal in basketball. I mean, they were amazing. They brought in 4 starters out of the portal. They're okay in football, not great. Any correlation there? Why basketball, NIL, any of those things? Why so much better in the portal in basketball than maybe in football?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that either. I'm with you. I know nothing about college basketball portal or anything like that. The football thing seems to be, to me, they seem to do a good job of getting the guys that they want. Like their evaluation is, we want this kid, we get this kid, right? I mean, even Graham Mertz last year. They were very high on Graham very early on. So I don't know, like if you're going to go back and you're going to look at the portal success or failures, you'd have to know who they wanted but didn't get. I think largely you just got to look at this as a evaluation tool. And sure, there's probably guys that hit the portal they'd love to have, but they know that the bidding starts at 1.5, and we're just not going to go there.
1.5.
I'm making that up, but you know what I mean.
But
like
I don't think you're probably far off.
Not far off, but I think there's probably some of that. But overall, I think this portal thing has become almost the minor leagues, right? Like we've been watching this guy at Shorter, we've been watching this guy at William and Mary, and we really like him, so we're going to go get him. And so it's an evaluation tool, I think.
Spring football ongoing, the NCAA tournament right around the corner. What's your next couple of weeks like? Just more draft prep for your guys?
Yeah, we start pro days, man, which is fun. That's the fun part of it. So we head out to LA the next week, late next week. Yeah, late next week. go from LA to Nashville, Nashville to Louisville, Louisville to Dallas.
Again, Denny Thompson, the owner of 6 Points Quarterback Training, does a terrific job and is helping a lot of these guys that are about to get drafted in late April in the NFL draft. Denny, enjoyed it, man. We'll do it again soon.
Let's do it.
For Denny Thompson, Graham Marsh, I'm the hacker Ryan Green. Thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. Thank you to George Moore Chevrolet for bringing you Gator Bytes, 1010XL.com and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page.